was supposed to be the happiest day, my son, marrying the woman he loved, a grand affair. Charleston's elite gathered, but then her voice, sharp and venomous, that ugly old sow. The microphone, still live, echoed her words. Every eye turned, every gasp audible. Humiliation, a burning fire in my gut. Then I saw him, her father, Gregory, his face frozen. He knew me. He knew what I'd done. A wedding day, meant for joy and new beginnings, can sometimes become the stage for old wounds and bitter truths. When vows are exchanged, so too are unspoken challenges, setting the course for an unexpected battle. The air in the grand ballroom of the Charlestonian Hotel was thick with the scent of lilies and celebration, a stark contrast to the sudden, icy silence that descended. My daughter-in-law, Seraphina, her voice amplified by the microphone she still held, had just delivered a verbal blow that resonated through every corner of the room. "That ugly old sow," she'd sneered, her words cutting deep, aimed squarely at me as I made my way to my seat. I felt the collective gaze of hundreds of elegant guests pivot, their murmurs dying into an agonizing hush. My heart hammered against my ribs, a cocktail of fury and profound humiliation flooding my senses, my hand involuntarily tightening around the small. The urge to flee, to escape this public spectacle, was almost overwhelming, a primal instinct screaming at me to disappear. As the initial shock began to recede, replaced by a steely resolve, my gaze swept across the bewildered faces of the guests, eventually landing on Seraphina's father, Gregory. He had been laughing moments before, a picture of geniality in his distinguished features, usually so composed, contorted into an expression of disbelief, his jaw slackening almost imperceptibly. The realization dawned on him, a silent thunderclap in the festive hall. "You're Marian Cole." I heard an echo in my mind, a phantom whisper of a conversation from weeks ago about the business deal that changed everything. The recognition in his gickly acquired his legacy. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips, a silent acknowledgement of the trap I had laid, long before this wedding day. I decided then and there I would not leave early. The reception's hum gradually resumed, a desperate attempt to ignore the earlier incident, but an undercurrent of tension now permeated the joyous facade. Later, I found Gregory cornered near the grand marble bar, pretending to examine a cocktail menu. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up a glass. I approached him, a quiet predator. "Gregory," I said, my voice low, a silken thread cutting through the ambient chatter. He stiffened, turning slowly. "Marian," he acknowledged, his voice strained. I didn't realize it was you." I watched him, a slight tilt of my head, observing the subtle panic flickering in his gaze. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie, clearly uncomfortable. The truth of our connection, both personal and professional, hung heavy between us, a stark reminder of the corporate upheaval I had orchestrated. Gregory's discomfort was a satisfying symphony in my ears, a testament to the power dynamic now undeniably shifted. "It seems there's much we need to discuss beyond the celebration of our children's union," I remarked, my tone even, yet laced with an undeniable edge. He visibly winced, a flicker of fear crossing his face. Seraphina, meanwhile, oblivious to the seismic shift happening between her father and her new mother-in-law, was on the dance floor, laughing boisterously with Elijah. She caught my eye across the crowded room, offering a smug, self-satisfied smile, completely unaware of the intricate web of consequences her public outburst had spun. Her ignorance was almost charming, if not for the bitter taste of her earlier words. I observed her, then Gregory, and a fresh surge of determination hardened my resolve. This wedding was far from over, and its true drama had only just begun. As the evening wore on, the DJ announced the toast, and the room quieted once more. Gregory, still looking pale, made his way to the microphone, his usual confidence visibly shaken. He began a generic speech about love and happiness. Before he could finish, I subtly caught the eye of a waiter passing by, giving him a discreet nod. Moments later, the waiter approached Gregory, handing him a folded note. Gregory paused mid-sentence, his brow furrowed in confusion, and unfolded the paper. As he read the contents, his face drained of all color, his hand clutching the note tightly. He looked up, his gaze locking with mine across the room. Pure terror in his... The note, a simple reminder of his company's acquisition, was just the first piece of my intricately planned retribution, ensuring he understood the true cost of his daughter's insolence. The microphone was still on, broadcasting his stunned silence to everyone. A palpable dread settled over the ballroom as Gregory stood frozen at the microphone, the crumpled note in his hand a silent scream. His face, usually so composed, was ashen, his gaze fixed on me with a mixture of terror and dawning comprehension. A ripple of whispers spread through the guests. Elijah, my son, looked utterly bewildered, his brow furrowed with concern for his new father-in-law. He glanced at me, then back at Gregory, a silent question in his... Seraphina, initially annoyed by her father's awkward pause, now looked genuinely confused, her radiant smile fading into a worried frown. The celebration had curdled, replaced by a tense, uneasy quiet, a testament to the power of a single, well-placed piece of paper. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and the heavy weight of a secret exposed. Later, as the DJ tried to coax the mood back to celebration with upbeat music, Elijah found me near the opulent floral archway, his voice low with genuine concern. "Mother, what happened with Gregory?" He looked absolutely ill after that note. He searched I met his gaze, my expression carefully neutral. "Some business matters, Elijah. Nothing you need to trouble yourself with on your wedding day." He didn't look convinced. "But he's my father-in-law now, and Seraphina is upset. It feels connected to something more." I sighed, a performance of reluctance. Perhaps he's finally realizing the full implications of certain past decisions, or rather, the consequences of those closest to him. My words were veiled, but the unspoken accusation against Seraphina hung heavy in the air between us, a stark reminder of her public insult. Across the room, Gregory was a man unraveling. He paced frantically near the entrance, occasionally pulling out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen as if unable to decide who to call. His replacing the earlier terror, he mumbled to himself, running a hand over his neatly trimmed. He clearly needed to speak with me, but pride or perhaps fear held him captive. The weight of his company's loss, combined with the public embarrassment and the uncertainty of my next move, was visibly crushing him. He was a cornered animal, and I observed his distress with a quiet, unwavering satisfaction. Seraphina, though initially focused on the wedding festivities, couldn't ignore the escalating tension for long. She watched her father from the dance floor, her movements becoming stiff, her laughter forced. When Elijah returned from speaking with me, she immediately cornered him. "What's wrong with Daddy? And why is your mother looking at him like that?" she demanded, her voice edged with a new, sharper tone. Elijah tried to deflect. "It's just some business, Seraphina. Let's not worry about it tonight." "But her... business? On our wedding day? And why did your mother look like she just won the lottery when Daddy looked like he saw a ghost?" Her gaze drifted to me, a flicker of nascent hostility replacing her earlier confusion. The insult she had thrown earlier now seemed to boomerang back, casting a long, dark shadow over her perfect day. My opportunity arrived during the cake cutting. As the attention of the room converged on Seraphina and Elijah, I moved discreetly towards a prominent guest, a well-known financier named Mr. Davies, who had dealings with both Gregory and me. I engaged him in seemingly casual conversation, my voice low but clear enough to carry to Gregory, who was still hovering anxiously nearby, trying to appear nonchalant. "Mr. Davies," I began, a delicate smile playing on my lips. "It's truly a shame about Whitmore Logistics. Such a historic Charleston company. I heard Gregory nearly managed to secure that last-minute restructuring loan before the acquisition, but the paperwork was quite telling about certain undisclosed liabilities." Gregory froze, his decision strike. He knew exactly what undisclosed liabilities I was referring to, and the profound implications of that information reaching the ears of powerful figures like Mr. Davies. His face was a mask of utter despair, his world crumbling around him, publicly, irrevocably. Gregory, now a shell of his former self, attempted to slip away from the wedding reception, phone pressed to his ear, a desperate plea for help about to be uttered. Marian, however, was a step ahead, subtly blocking his path, her presence a silent, suffocating weight. His attempts to evade her were futile, his frantic whispers into the phone growing increasingly strained. He looked around, a hunted man, realizing there was no escape from her watchful. The music and laughter of the party now felt like a mocking backdrop to his unraveling, each joyous note a reminder of his rapidly crumbling world. He clutched his phone tighter, his knuckles the formidable woman before him. Marian's voice, a low, controlled hum, cut through Gregory's frantic thoughts. "Gregory, we need to speak, privately." She guided him towards a secluded alcove, away from the main celebration, her grip on his arm firm, almost proprietorial. He tried to pull away, but her gaze held him captive, a silent promise of deeper trouble if he resisted. "Those undisclosed liabilities I mentioned to Mr. Davies earlier, they're more significant than you realize. They could lead to other complications, beyond just the acquisition." Gregory's face paled further, the implication clear. Marian held more than just his company. She held his reputation, perhaps even his freedom in her hands. He swallowed hard, the weight of her words settled heavily, suffocating him, the air in the alcove growing thin with unspoken threats. Seraphina, her initial annoyance now curdled into genuine fear for her father, finally found Marian after observing the intense conversation in the alcove. Her radiant wedding glow was replaced by a tense frown, her shoulders stiff with accusation. "What have you done to my father?" she demanded, her voice sharp, barely contained, cutting through the ambient chatter of the party. Elijah, sensing the escalating tension, stepped between them, his hand gently on Seraphina's arm, his face etched with concern. "Seraphina, please. Let's not make a scene. It's our wedding day." But Seraphina was past politeness. "This is my wedding day. You're ruining everything." Marian met her gaze, a slight, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. "Perhaps, my dear, you've only just begun to understand what ruining everything truly entails." The air crackled with their unspoken animosity. The beautiful decor of the ballroom, a stark contrast to the ugliness unfurling. Marian stepped closer to Seraphina, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper that only the three of them could hear over the distant music. "You think your words are inconsequential, Seraphina? That your cruel jibes carry no weight?" She paused, letting her words sink into the bride's increasingly troubled mind. "Your father's company, Whitmore Logistics, wasn't just acquired because of mere business strategy. There were certain vulnerabilities made glaringly obvious by public perception, by the kind of reckless disregard you showed tonight. Seraphina's connection between her insult and her father's plight." Elijah looked from his mother to his wife, a knot of confusion and concern tightening in his chest. "What are you talking about, Mother?" he asked, his voice strained. But Marian's gaze was fixed on Seraphina, who now looked truly broken, the weight of her earlier insult now magnified 100-fold, crushing her under its unexpected consequences. The revelation hung heavy in the air, suffocating Seraphina, the full implications of her actions finally crashing down upon her. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Gregory, who had been trying to compose himself and regain some semblance of dignity, stumbled, clutching his chest. A collective gasp rippled through the few remaining guests, their attention drawn away from the dance floor to the unfolding drama. Elijah rushed towards him, Seraphina hot on his heels, their earlier argument forgotten in the face of this new, terrifying crisis. Gregory on his knees looked up, "Marian, the truth. I had to..." He struggled for breath, his gaze sweeping frantically around the room, landing on Seraphina, then back to Marian. "It wasn't just the liabilities. There was another reason." His words trailed off, a dramatic cough racking his body as he collapsed fully, his secret still hovering on the edge of being revealed, leaving everyone in stunned silence. The wedding, once a symbol of union and joy, was now a scene of utter chaos and impending disaster, the truth threatening to shatter both families forever. The opulent ballroom, moments ago filled with the echo of joyful music, was now a tableau of frozen horror. Gregory lay still on the polished floor, his earlier words, "It wasn't just the liabilities. There was another reason," hanging in the air like a ghostly premonition. Elijah, his handsome face contorted with panic, knelt beside his father-in-law, fumbling for a pulse, his voice a frantic whisper. Seraphina, her wedding mouth, the glittering tiara now askew. Amidst the chaos, Marian stood a few paces back, her emerald gown shimmering under the chandeliers, a quiet observer to the unfolding catastrophe. Her expression, though grave, held a flicker of something unreadable. Was it concern, or a cold calculation of the new turn of events? The first wail of a distant siren began to slice through the sudden, suffocating silence of the wedding hall, announcing the undeniable arrival of a crisis far beyond a simple business deal or a public insult. The carefully constructed facade of celebration had shattered completely, leaving raw fear and uncertainty in its wake. The sterile chill of the hospital waiting room was a stark contrast to the earlier warmth of the ballroom, and the tension in the air was even more palpable. Elijah sat slumped in a plastic chair, his tuxedo now rumpled, his gaze fixed on the closed doors of the emergency room. The Seraphina, stripped of her tiara and veil, was huddled next to him, her tears silently tracing paths down her face, staining the lace of her gown. Her earlier defiance had evaporated, replaced by a profound vulnerability. Marian sat across the room, her elegant posture unwavering, though her sharp. She watched Seraphina, a silent question in her gaze. A doctor finally emerged, his face grim, and delivered a terse update. Gregory had suffered a severe cardiac event, his condition critical but stable. He was unconscious and the doctors were running tests. The other reason for his collapse remained a terrifying, unspoken mystery, casting a long shadow over the anxious silence. Later, in the hushed quiet of her penthouse apartment, Marian stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, the city lights a glittering tapestry below. The emerald current situation, Gregory's half-uttered words. It wasn't just the liabilities. There was another reason, echoed in her mind, a persistent, unsettling refrain. Her initial plan, a calculated retribution, now felt incomplete, tinged with an unexpected complication. What secret could Gregory have been hiding that was more devastating than the loss of his company? Was there something she had overlooked? A deeper vulnerability she hadn't exploited? She sipped from a glass of chilled water, the coolness a stark contrast to the burning questions in her mind. Her victory, once so clear and satisfying, was now clouded with a new layer of uncertainty, hinting at an unforeseen depth to Gregory's predicament that extended beyond her meticulous strategic reach. Back at the hospital, Seraphina's grief began to morph into a simmering resentment, her mind replaying the sequence of events, Marian's words at the wedding, her father's panic, and then his collapse. The pieces, though still disparate, were beginning to form a terrifying mosaic. She paced the hushed corridor, her wedding, her long, dark-braided. A fierce protectiveness surged through her, hardening her earlier vulnerability. She had to find out what Marian had done, what secret had driven her father to this brink. Her phone was clutched tightly in her hand, her thumb hovering over contacts, searching for someone, anyone, who could shed light on the truth. The naive bride was fading, replaced by a woman fueled by a desperate need for answers and a burgeoning desire for revenge. Hours later, the waiting room remained a silent vigil. Elijah had finally convinced Seraphina to rest, her head on his shoulder, but sleep wouldn't come. Suddenly, a new figure appeared down the corridor, a man in a sharp. It was Mr. Davies, the financier Marian had discreetly spoken to at the wedding. He approached the nurse's station, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Just then, a slight rustle came from Gregory's ICU room, the door ajar. Inside, Gregory stirred, his gaze, weak but lucid, found the nurse. He struggled to speak, his lips barely forming a word, his hand weakly lifting. "The package," he rasped, his voice a faint whisper, barely audible, before his lateral situation. Seraphina paced the hospital waiting room once more, her mind a whirlwind of fragmented thoughts and chilling possibilities. Her father's whispered words, "The package," echoed ceaselessly, igniting a desperate urgency within her. She knew. She couldn't rely on Elijah, who was still consumed by worry, or Marian, who felt more like a predator than a protector. Her gaze fell on Mr. Davies, still speaking softly at the nurse's station, an insidious curiosity compelling her forward. She needed answers, a clear path through the labyrinth of secrets and half-truths that now suffocated her family. With a newfound resolve, she moved towards him, her voice a low, insistent murmur. "Mr. Davies, I need to understand what happened to my father." Her demand was stark, a desperate plea cloaked in burgeoning anger. Marian watched Seraphina approach Mr. Davies from a secluded corner of the waiting room, a subtle smile playing on her lips. She had anticipated Seraphina's desperate search for answers, a predictable reaction from someone so blinded by entitlement. Gregory's cryptic package was an unexpected variable, yet Marian was already recalculating, adapting her strategy to incorporate this new layer of intrigue. Her plan had always been about control, and this new secret, whatever it was, simply presented another opportunity to tighten her grip. She sipped her water, her mind meticulously piecing together potential scenarios. The game had merely evolved, and Marian was always ready to play. Elijah, though exhausted, couldn't shake the deep unease that settled in his gut. He had seen Seraphina's desperate pursuit of Mr. Davies, and then his mother's almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction. The pieces didn't fit, and the tension between his wife and his mother was palpable, a growing chasm threatening to swallow them all. He approached Seraphina, his voice gentle but firm. "Seraphina, what are you doing? Let the doctors handle this. We don't need to provoke anyone, especially not now." He tried to place a comforting hand on her arm, but she recoiled, her frustration boiling over. "Provoke? Elijah, don't you see? Your mother knows something, and so does Mr. Davies. Daddy's package isn't just a business deal. It's something more." Despite Elijah's pleas, Seraphina persisted, her unwavering resolve eventually yielding a sliver of information from a reluctant Mr. Davies. He spoke cryptically, mentioning a series of special deliveries that Gregory had been arranging, not through Whitmore Logistics' official channels, but through a shell company. "He was desperate, Seraphina," Mr. Davies had whispered. Desperate to keep it quiet, to keep it out of the books." Seraphina's mind raced, connecting the dots. A package not delivered but containing something. She knew just the person who handled odd jobs for her father on the side, someone discreet who might know about these special deliveries. The lead was tenuous, but it was a lead nonetheless, a flickering flame in the encroaching darkness. Seraphina, acting on instinct, made the call. A gruff voice on the other end confirmed her fears and suspicions, revealing Gregory's hidden dealings. The package wasn't a metaphor. It was a physical item, a small, heavily encrypted data drive containing irrefutable evidence of a massive money laundering scheme that Gregory had been involved in for years, using Whitmore Logistics as a front. The informant, a disgruntled former associate, revealed that Gregory had intended to use the wedding as a cover to pass the drive to a contact, a desperate attempt to expose the true mastermind before he was silenced. Seraphina gasped, the weight of the revelation crushing her, her hand flying to her mouth. This wasn't just about her father's company or Marian's revenge. This was a criminal conspiracy, far grander and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Her father wasn't just losing his company. He was tangled in something that could destroy them all. And the true orchestrator of this insidious plot remained unknown, a shadow looming over her fragile new family. Seraphina, reeling from the informant's revelation about the money laundering, knew she had to find the data drive. Her father's life, and perhaps their freedom, depended on it. The weight of his secret, a sprawling criminal scheme, pressed down on her, replacing her earlier anger with a desperate clarity. She had to locate that package before anyone else, especially the true mastermind, could get their hands on it. The sterile hospital atmosphere felt like a cage, but his private office, his sanctuary of guarded secrets, called to her with an undeniable urgency. She pictured his study, the hidden compartments, the places he typically kept his most guarded possessions, a frantic mental inventory guiding her. There was no time to lose, no moment for hesitation. The future of her family hinged on this single, desperate quest. Hours later, in the quiet solitude of Gregory's study, Seraphina finally located the hidden compartment behind a false book panel. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out a small metallic data drive, its cold surface a stark contrast to the racing heat in her veins. Just as her grip tightened around the cool metal, a soft, deliberate click echoed from the doorway, making her jump. Marian stood there, her presence commanding, her emerald gown shimmering faintly in the subdued light, her, "Looking for something, dear?" Marian's voice, though calm and measured, was laced with an unnerving awareness that sent a chill down Seraphina's spine. Seraphina clutched the drive tighter, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, the sudden confrontation stealing her breath. The truth was within reach, but so was danger, now personified in her elegant, formidable mother-in-law. "You know about this, don't you?" Seraphina accused, her voice barely a whisper, yet vibrating with raw emotion and a desperate need for answers. Marian stepped forward, her expression unreadable, her gaze unwavering. "I know Gregory had secrets, Seraphina. Secrets he was desperate to keep hidden. But the full extent of them? That's precisely what we're about to discover. Together." Seraphina hesitated for only a moment, then, with a surge of newfound courage born from desperation, she inserted the data drive into Gregory's laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing encrypted files. Then a grainy video began to play. It showed Gregory, frail and panicked, speaking directly to the camera, detailing the entire money laundering scheme. He named names, unequivocally implicating Mr. Davies, the seemingly innocuous financier, as the true mastermind, having leveraged Whitmore logistics for years as a front. The final clip showed a chilling scene of Mr. Davies coercing Gregory, threatening his family if he didn't comply. Marian's in her meticulous plan had unearthed a viper's nest far more dangerous and complex than she'd ever imagined. Marian's mind raced, processing the profound implications of the video. Her initial desire for retribution against Gregory now seemed petty and insignificant against the backdrop of a vast criminal enterprise. Mr. Davies, a man she had considered a minor pawn in her corporate games, was revealed to be a ruthless kingpin. The stakes had dramatically shifted, transforming a personal vendetta into a battle against a dangerous criminal. She looked at Seraphina, a newfound respect dawning for the young woman's courage and tenacity in uncovering such a truth. "We need to expose him, Seraphina," Marian stated, her voice firm, resolute, and undeniably strategic. Later that day, with Elijah providing silent support by their side, Marian and Seraphina confronted Mr. Davies at the hospital, where he was still discreetly inquiring about Gregory's condition. Marian, holding a copy of the encrypted data drive, laid out the evidence with cold, unwavering precision, leaving no room for denial. Mr. Davies's usual composure crumbled, his face paling as his illicit empire, painstakingly built on deceit, unraveled before his very... The subtle power play had turned into a full-blown exposé, leading to his swift downfall. News of Mr. Davies's swift arrest spread quickly through the hushed hospital, a quiet victory in the sterile air that replaced the earlier dread. Days later, Gregory finally stirred, slowly regaining consciousness. He learned of Seraphina's incredible bravery in finding the drive, and Marian's decisive action to expose Mr. Davies. A heavy sigh of profound relief escaping his lips, his voice weak, but filled with gratitude. The irrefutable evidence on the data drive, coupled with Gregory's testimony about coercion, painted him not as a willing participant, but as a terrified victim, though his reputation and company were irrevocably damaged. Seraphina sat by his bedside, holding his hand. The bitterness and anger of the wedding day, replaced by a profound love and understanding for her father's desperate choices. Marian, watching from the doorway, offered a small, almost imperceptible nod to Seraphina, a silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal and an unspoken truce. Their relationship, forged in the fires of betrayal and redemption, was now complex, but held a fragile promise of respect and perhaps a genuine connection. Elijah joined them, a quiet strength emanating from him, finally seeing his family, broken but beginning to heal, moving towards a future built on honesty and a newfound, hard-won unity. The lavish wedding, once a symbol of superficial joy, had ended in chaos, but from its ruins, a stronger, more authentic family had begun to emerge, forever changed, but ultimately united. Thank you for watching The Insult at the Altar. If you enjoyed this dramatic journey, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more compelling stories on our channel.